What in the world is a boondoggle? Where did the term come from? Answers straight ahead. This is your host, Stephen Carter, and I welcome you to this episode of History of Everyday Sayings. This show is for you if you're a logophile, a writer, a speaker of Philomath, or you're simply someone who loves history tidbits you can use to impress friends and family. Each episode is short, they're bite-sized for easy listening and recall. I was contacted by a listener who asked me to look into the origin of the term boondoggle. And by the way, I love to hear from listeners, so if you have a word or a term, a phrase you would like the answer to as far as its origin and its meaning, do email me at cartermethod@gmail.com, cartermethod@gmail.com. To begin our investigation, let's go to dictionary.com for the definition of the word boondoggle. First, it is a noun. They describe it as a wasteful and worthless project undertaken for political, corporate, or personal gain, typically government projects funded by taxpayers. There are two verb forms of the word boondoggled and boondoggling. Dictionary.com has those as to deceive or attempt to deceive. Example, to boondoggle investors into a low-interest scheme. The verb form can also mean to do work of little or no practical value, merely to keep or look busy. The American Heritage Dictionary adds a little bit more to this, and this will be important, and you'll see why in a moment. They have it as a noun, an unnecessary or wasteful project or activity. Definition 2, a braided leather cord worn as a decoration, especially by Boy Scouts. Noun definition 3, a cord of braided leather, fabric, or plastic strips made by a child as a project to keep busy. Going to Wikipedia, which I really don't like to do, but there is some value here in specific relation to this word. Boondoggle was the name of the newspaper of the Roosevelt Troop of the Boy Scouts based in Rochester, New York, and it first appeared in print in 1927. From there, it passed into general use in scouting in the 1930s. It was attributed to a Boy Scout from Rochester who coined the term to describe a new type of uniform decoration. After the presentation of honorific boondoggles at a world jamboree, the use of the word spread to other troops and branches. An Oakland Scout troop presented a boondoggle as an award for attendees who spent 7 days and nights at Camp Diamond. The boondoggle was described as a red leather strip which terminates in a red wooden diamond on which is painted the number 1930. How did this term, originally related to the Boy Scouts, find its way into general use? In 1935, an article in the New York Times reported that more than $3 million had been spent on recreational activities for the jobless as part of the New Deal. Among those activities were craft classes, where the production of boondoggles, described in the article as various utilitarian gadgets made with cloth or leather, were taught. The phrase became popular due to its use by the flamboyant criminal lawyer Lloyd Paul Stryker. History.com, well, they also weigh in on the term boondoggle. Quote, the Oxford Dictionary of American Political Slang defines a boondoggle as an extravagant and useless project, but behind the funny-sounding name is actual history. During the late 1920s and early 30s, Boy Scouts at summer camps spent their days not only swimming and playing in games, but participating in the latest scouting craze. where they braided and knotted colorful strands of plastic and leather to fashion lanyards, neckerchief, slides, and bracelets. According to the March 1930 issue of Scouting magazine, Eagle Scout Robert Link of Rochester, New York, coined the term for his new handicraft, boondoggling. Scouts continued to craft boondoggles during the Great Depression, although few Americans had heard of them until they suddenly became front-page news on April the 4th, 1935, when the New York Times reported that investigating city aldermen had discovered that the Federal Works Progress Administration, or the WPA, had spent more than $3 million on training for unemployed white-collar workers that included instruction in ballet dancing, shadow puppetry, and making boondoggles. Hundreds of unemployed teachers who were paid $87 a month by the WPA received 2 hours of boondoggling instructions as part of their training to establish recreational programs that showed children in poorer neighborhoods how to transform old cigar boxes, tin cans, and other discarded materials into useful gadgets and ornamental crafts. Quote, "These projects were not carried on in Fifth Avenue," close quote, insisted WPA official Grace Goslin, but in sections of the city where the children who are benefiting would otherwise be in the streets. As you might imagine, there was a load of resistance by Republicans and others as well toward the WPA for what some people would say were, well, boondoggles. If you would like to learn more about this term, boondoggle, or boondoggled, or doggling, or any of the other possible terms around this word, boondoggle, do check the show notes. I will have all of the sources I use for this episode linked up in the show notes. There are few people who know the origin of this term, but now you can count yourself among the elite of people who do. For more amazing history of everyday sayings, do subscribe where you get your podcasts. If you would like to comment on this or any other episode, email me at cartermethod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Until our next visit, your host here, Stephen Carter, and I wish you blessings in abundance.